Hello knitting friends, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and today we're going to learn how to do the I-cord stitch. Now the I-cord produces this really fun little tubular tube of knitting which can be used for a multiple of things. You can use it as a drawstring, a handle for a knitting bag, a knitted bag, decorations for kids' hats. It can be a really fun stitch and it is super easy to do. So let's get started on doing this fun stitch. Okay, to do the I-cord stitch, you will need to use a double-pointed needle for this stitch, and that will become clear in just a moment. I'm going to start by using a number 6 size needle, and I'm just going to use some worsted weight yarn. And you can make your I-cord tube any size you really need it. This is probably about the smallest you can make it. This is by casting on 3 stitches to start with. This one is, I used 5 stitches for this. And so you can probably use anywhere between 3 and 6. 7 might be a little bit large, but it makes for, you can do, different size little strands of knitting. So let's do this 5 stitch size. And take one of your DPN needles, and we're going to just cast on 5 stitches to begin with. Okay, so now I have 5 stitches on my needle. So normally after you cast on, you would turn your needle and start to knit with your working yarn on the very right side of your needle. But not so with knitting the I-cord. After you cast on, keep your needle in this position, and we're just going to slide the stitches to the other end of the needle. This is why we need a double pointed needle, because you need tips on both sides. And now we're going to knit this way, and your working yarn is actually kind of, really in the wrong spot, right? It's way on the left side of your knitting, but that's where we want it to do the I-cord. So we're going to get ready to work with our working yarn that's now on the left side, and just go ahead and knit that first stitch and knit all the stitches on your needle, actually, all the way to the end of that row. Okay, and now that we've completed that row, we again are not going to turn our needle, we're just going to slide those stitches to the other end of our double pointed needle. And now we're going to knit this row from this way. And you'll just continue that little sequence of sliding, never turning your needle, just sliding it to the other end. So when you finish that row, we will now slide our stitches to the other end. And let me show you also a little tip on doing the I-cord stitch. If you knit this first stitch and take it off your needle, you'll notice right away that this first stitch, you've got this little loose stitch here, this little loop that you can't seem to tighten. Well, to tighten that up, the best way to do it, I found, is on that very next stitch. After you knit it and while you're taking it off, give it an extra little snug tug, and that tightens up that little loose stitch. And I kind of do a little extra little tug actually on each one of my stitches. I tend to try to knit a little tighter when I do the I-cord, and that just makes for a nice tighter tube of knitting than if you knit really loose. So again, loose stitch there, let's tighten that up with our next stitch, pull it snug, and let's finish this row. And now I'm going to just work ahead a little bit so you can kind of see what this looks like after a little while, because eventually you'll become real clear that you're actually knitting a tiny little tube, a little 3D tube. So let me come back in just a little bit and I'll show you what it looks like after we knit a few more rows. Now that I've knitted a few more rows of this I-cord, you can kind of see if you flip it over that you're actually just kind of knitting this tubular piece of fabric, because you're just kind of wrapping it around as you're knitting. You're never knitting both sides. You always got the right side together or facing you, and you're just wrapping it around because you're working with the working yarn on the wrong side. So when you're ready to bind off for the I-cord, it's really no different from any other bind off. You just, on your next row, on your next row that you want to bind off, you're just going to knit one stitch, knit a second stitch, and pass that stitch over just like you would for any other bind off. It's no different. So we can just bind off these 5 stitches here. Oops. There we go. And then we can pull our loop out, give it a trim, and you can weave in your ends. And when you weave in your ends, you can just tuck that end right in the center of your cord and you won't be able to see that. So this is just a really fun things. You might see it in patterns, you know, to do an I-cord for, as I mentioned, for a drawstring, a strap of a purse, whatever it is, but it really is a very simple, easy thing to do. So that's the I-cord. So I hope you found this helpful, everyone. If so, please like, and don't forget to subscribe to receive notifications of new videos each week, all about knitting tips and stitches and creative patterns. Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy knitting.